Yo, what's up, your boy Ghost here. Today I am bringing you guys another comparison video between the Automaton and STG. And I wanted to make this comparison because in the recent mid-season update, they ended up actually significantly, or at least in my eyes, significantly buffing both the Automaton and STG. And specifically, the Automaton actually receiving a huge buff where this gun literally changed from what it was before the update to what it is now. And I've also risen the question since the brand got nerfed in this update, or apparently nerfed, because again, a lot of people say that this gun is still really good, but we're just going on the assumption that it did get nerfed to the point where a new meta could come into play, which in this case would be the Automaton or STG. But before we do get into this comparison, I want to say if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We're going to 2,000. We just hit 1.9k, so thank you guys for that. We're 100 subs away from the big 2k. So if you find any of my content enjoyable and you want to help a brother out, man, please hit that subscribe button, man, because we are getting closer and closer, and I just cannot wait to hit 2,000. But with that being said, though, let's get into the comparison. And here we have the recoil pattern for the Automaton. Now, don't let this recoil pattern dictate your opinion on the weapon and just dictate any thoughts you may have on this gun, because trust me, bro, that recoil pattern is just completely has nothing to do with how this gun performs when you put on the attachments. This gun is a completely different weapon than what that recoil pattern showcases. Like, for example, in this clip, this is without me mounting. Like, bro, this gun does not move anymore. It's back to what it used to be. If you guys remember back when the iteration first happened, the Automaton was the gun. Like, this was the gun that everyone used. It was the meta for the first 1 or 2 weeks before it eventually got nerfed, and then the recoil was just it was just bad until they finally rebuffed it to the point where it feels like the same. I'm not sure if they ended up nerfing the damage in the past. I know they didn't touch the damage at all this time around, but I don't really remember how strong it was back in the day. Or I keep saying back in the day. I mean, I don't know how strong it was when it first was the meta, and I don't really recall the patch notes from that time period because we've had so many patches. It's kind of hard to keep track of what got changed, what didn't get changed. But the one thing that I do remember was the recoil. Now the recoil it's just 180. It's completely different than what it used to be. This gun is definitely, I would say, in conversation of being one of the weapons that is meta, because this gun again was really good when it was no recoil, and it's now back. You can make the argument that it's not 100% back to what it used to be, but it's definitely it shows signs of what it used to be. And if you have not used it yet, man, try it out. You guys will be really surprised at how easy it is to control. And when you do control, this gun it's a straight laser beam, bro. Laser beam. This gun does not move. It's insane how much they actually change it. Because typically when they do some recoil changes to guns, they typically mess up. You know what I'm talking about. When they nerf, or when they say that they nerf recoil or they buff recoil, it just typically never changes. But now, this gun definitely, out of all the recoil changes they've ever made in this game, in my opinion, this is something that, it's very noticeable, night and day, man. Because if you used this Automaton before the update, this gun was kicking up everywhere. No matter what you did, this gun was kicking up everywhere. But now it's, it's a different weapon, and the damage is still pretty solid. And if people are considering the STG to be a meta candidate, I think the Automaton should also slide into that conversation, because it's pretty similar to the STG, barring the stats, which we'll get into in a second. But there's a lot of aspects that, in my opinion, are very similar. In some cases, surpass the STG. And I don't know. I guess the update is just still kind of new, so people aren't really talking about the Automaton yet. But I'm seeing more and more people slowly starting to shift onto the Automaton wave. And yeah, man. With that being said, though, let's go on over to the STG and stats. And here we have the recoil pattern for the STG, and just like the Automaton, both of these weapons, you wouldn't be able to tell that they were low recoil weapons based off their recoil pattern, because these are pretty tough. But just like the Automaton, when you put on your attachments and whatnot, this gun is definitely low recoil. And again, in the patch, they both ended up receiving a recoil buff, which is kind of crazy because, well, the Automaton makes sense, but the STG already was a pretty, I guess, easy weapon to control. I would say still pretty low recoil. It was a little bit weird on the accuracy at times, but overall it was a pretty low recoil weapon, and they ended up buffing it. And the Automaton, obviously a high recoil weapon, got a rightful buff, and now we're here. But anyways, moving on over to the first stat, we have the fire rate. in which the STG has a 600 RPM and the Automaton has an 833 RPM. And an 833 RPM is really, really crazy for an AR. Typically, that's what you be seeing for some of the SMGs. Like, that's on average what you see. So for an AR to have a really high fire rate and have no recoil, like, that's just a formula for a really solid weapon. And now if the damage matches up with those two characteristics, then you have yourself a solidified godly weapon. But I'm not gonna lie, when you guys hear about the Automaton's damage stats, you're gonna be a little, like, you know, offset by it, because I'm kind of like, I don't know, like, for me personally, looking at these stats, it doesn't really scream meta, but it's not about the numbers sometimes, and you'll see why. Anyways, moving on over to the first damage stats. For the STG, 0 to 31 meters, we have 45 damage to the head and neck, 33 to the chest, and then 30 to the stomach and extremities. And then for the Automaton, 0 to 42 meters, we have 33 to the head and neck, 24 to the chest and stomach, and then 22 to the extremities. Now, those damage values for the Automaton doesn't necessarily scream meta, but if it's anything close to what it was when this gun was meta, and again, I'm not 100% sure, I'm not too confident in what I'm about to say, because I don't remember if they ended up nerfing the Automaton's damage back when it was really good. But if they did, then these numbers are very similar to what it once was. And if it didn't get touched, then these were still the same stats when the Automaton was king. And so, don't let these numbers at face value just like dictate how you think this weapon is and if this weapon is good or bad. Because even if, like I said, like, if these stats have slightly changed or haven't changed at all, this gun used to be king with these sort of stats, and right now it's still capable of being so, because Vanguard, the thing about these weapons, there's a lot of opportunities to change them, especially things like fire rate and damage, so making them kill a little bit faster isn't out of the question. And so if you wanted to experiment and try to make a class setup with faster fire rate or something like Hollow Point where you get a little bit more limb damage, like, you're open to do so, and even then you might be able to find something better than what I currently have, because I think my gun kills pretty fast. There is times where it feels like I leave people one shot or leave them weak, and I like output a lot of damage but don't necessarily get the downs as I typically would with like other weapons. But the Automaton is still good, and damage isn't all that it has, or don't let the damage dictate the whole gun, basically. Even though it is an important thing, just don't let that whole thing be the reason why you use or don't use the weapon, because it's not the only thing that matters. And I'll explain a little bit more on that a little bit later after I tell you guys the stats on the longer ranges for these weapons. So for 31 meters and above, for the STG, we have 39 to the head and neck, 28 to the chest, 26 to the stomach and extremities. And then for the Automaton, 42 meters and above, 28 to the head and neck, 20 to the chest and stomach, and then 19 to the extremities. So again, the advantage obviously clearly in the field with the STG, but ever since I started making these comparisons, I do respect the damage values, but I don't take that as the whole story, like I'm going to keep talking about, because if you guys are not aware, the MAC 10, and this is like my go-to example all the time, because it's just such a good example, especially in cases like these. But the MAC 10, damage-wise, especially after the nerf, wasn't always the craziest heavy hitter. The thing about it is that it had a stupidly fast fire rate. And to be honest, when you hear the number, like, you just can't believe it, because it doesn't sound like it shoots that fast, but it shoots extremely fast. And it shot well over 1,000 RPM, which is just crazy. But the damage was similar to what like the Automaton is, or equivalent to the Automaton, where it just seemed like really weak, and yet it was always considered a top SMG throughout the metas. And even now, I feel like you can still use it and still be really, really good. And that's similar to how the STG, I think, or my bad, that's similar to how the Automaton is right now, because this gun, damage-wise, isn't the craziest, especially, like, I just told you guys the STG, and the STG is completely out-damages it in every category and every range. But the thing about it is that fire rate difference is so crazy. Like, if you just get put in some right situations, the Automaton will be able to beat out just all these other guns, because it just shoots that much faster than it. And damage, yes, it's a big part of the game, but fire rate is just as important in certain situations. I know some of you guys agree with that, and some may be a little skeptical, but trust me, bro, fire rate is definitely very, very important. But anyways, man, let me know what you guys think about both of these weapons. I know that the STG was already talked about in my last video, and it's kind of like happening really fast. But, you know, the Automaton versus STG, I feel like was a little bit more fair than doing something like the Automaton in bar, just because I know damage is valued a lot. And if I did something like a bar versus Automaton, the bar has like crazy damage, and the Automaton would just look really, really weak. Whereas in this situation, you know, STG is a little bit more powerful, but you know, it's not like just crazy lopsided. But anyways, man, let me know what you guys think about both of these weapons, and I'll talk to you guys later. I'm out. Peace.